America Saves, and I am so happy to be here today for a part of Money Smart Week. For those of you who are not familiar, Money Smart Week is basically a week to help consumers make better financial choices and manage their finances to become more successful in saving and budgeting, becoming more creditworthy, etc. So we are so happy to be here today and kind of talk to you guys about some tips and tricks and ways that we think that can help you become more money smart. This chat is coming to you from, again, America Saves and the Cooperative Extension Network. I have some really great panelists with me today, so I would like to give all of them a couple of minutes just to introduce themselves. But first, I want to make sure that if you are joining us live, that you're also checking all the action out that is happening on Twitter. You can just follow it via hashtag MoneySmartChat. And that is going to be consistent with the questions that we have going on here. So you can chime in on Twitter, and you can also listen in over here with what our wonderful panelists have to say throughout the next hour. So I would like to start off by introducing our panelists, and I will just start with Alicia Blair from America Saves.
Hi, good afternoon. Again, I'm Alicia Blair. I'm the Military Saves Director, and I am very excited to be here for America Saves and Military Saves. I am calling in today from Fort Bliss, Texas.
Excellent, thank you. And Kathy Sweedler, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very excited to be here and have a chance to celebrate Money Smart Week together live. I work with University of Illinois Extension and am calling in from Champaign, Illinois, sort of East Central. There you go.
Great. And next to you, I have Laura Hendricks.
Hi, I'm Laura Hendricks. I'm with the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service here in Little Rock. I am the state specialist with Extension for family and consumer economics.
Excellent, thank you. And next we have Lorna Wounded Head.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lorna from South Dakota, and I work with South Dakota or SDSU Extension as the Family Resource Management Field Specialist. And I'm also excited to be a part of the YouTube Live today just to help promote Money Smart Week and to help consumers learn a little bit more about managing their finances.
Excellent. And then last but not least, we have Eric Anderson.
Hi, I'm Eric Anderson. I'm a professor of agricultural and extension education at the University of Idaho. I'm located in Moscow, Idaho. It's still morning here. I'm on the Pacific time zone representing the Western U.S. In this YouTube live event. I'm going to be tracking the Twitter sphere and the discussions on Twitter and reporting out about that conversation in today's event.
Excellent. So I am very, very happy and pleased to have this team of experts here to talk to you guys about how to become more money smart. But before I forget, I do want to mention that moneysmartweek.org has a really great resource where there is an events calendar where you can find any Money Smart Week events that are happening within the community that you live or work in. So if you're using this week to find the opportunity to better your finances, I encourage you to take a look at that events calendar to see if there's anything out there that you may be able to attend and learn from. So what's going to happen now is we're just going to have kind of a casual conversation. I'm going to ask some questions to our panelists, and we will have plenty of time to go into discussion. We've got some really exciting things to talk about today. So to kick it off, I'm going to ask Alicia, what do you think it means to be money smart?
Sure. So I think to be money smart means to do 3 simple things to kind of jumpstart your financial health and check in on your financial health. And that would be to set a goal, That goal could be short-term or long-term savings goals. The second step would be to make a plan. And one of the key parts of that plan would be to create a good budget, a sound budget, where you spend less than you earn and you save the difference. And then the third step would be to save automatically. And what that means is to save into an account, a savings account, and do that via automatic transfer, or in the military, you can do that through an allotment. So there are a couple different ways to do that, but the key is to set it automatically so you don't have to think about it. You can do it every month at the same time every month.
Excellent. Does anybody want to add on to that? I'm curious to know how, what else do you guys think it means to be money smart?
I think one thing I might add on to that, because that was like the perfect framework, is to, I like to encourage people to take some time and space and really dream big. Like to start out and think about, where do you want to be down the road? Because we get so caught up in like what I need to do today, the bills I need to pay, the kids I need to feed, the laundry that needs to be done, that sometimes we don't have a chance to think kind of down the road, whatever that might mean for you. And then while you're dreaming big, to think about what's really important to you. What do you value? And then, think about those goals and plans so that you can really do the things that matter to you, and you can empower yourself by using your money to get there. And so when we put all those things together, I think it leads to more, satisfied life, and we feel good about where we're going, even in the midst of folding laundry. So
that is so true.
No, I love that, because it is easy to get caught up with, the day-to-day and focusing on what you got to do just to get through the next 2 hours. So those dreams we often forget to think about and put into action. Laura, Lorna, do you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, I was going to add that I also feel that it's important to understand the value of creating a budget and tracking your spending. And that just really gives you a little sense of control of where you're at, and so that you really feel you're empowered to make some decisions. And the other thing, and Kathy mentioned this too, is being able to identify your values and what really is important to you, and remembering that your values are not the same as everyone else's. You don't need to manage your money the same as other people do. You have to do it the way that it works best for you. And then just recognizing, what is your relationship with money? Are there some issues? Do you make some bad decisions related to money based on maybe your stress level or other things that are happening in your life? And the sooner you can start addressing those and really paying attention to how they're impacting your financial situation, the better off that you're going to be.
That's excellent. Great. So I think we have some really great ideas of what it means to be money smart, and some consistent themes of kind of taking advantage of knowing what your goals are, putting them into, being able to put them into action and write them down. So I have a question for you, Laura. How important is it for somebody who wants to be money smart to have a bank or credit union or a relationship with a financial institution?
I think there are a couple of reasons why that's important. Just to recap from what we just talked about with being money smart, what I heard the rest of the panelists say, they talked about the knowledge and the skills, so actually being aware of the practices, and then the behavior, so that internal motivation, or actually being able to control the behavior so that we're doing the things that we know we're supposed to do to build wealth. And a financial institution is a great tool for that. So when we talk about financial security, for one thing, it's that secure part, so that your money is in a place where it is actually physically secure. And then the other thing is, one of the first tips we heard was to save automatically, and that's hard to do without a savings account. So a financial institution is a great tool because you can have money direct deposited into checking and into savings, and even separate savings accounts that work toward different goals. So a college education, or saving up for a down payment on a home, and then also paying bills automatically so that you never have to pay a late fee, because that's just automatically drafted out of your checking account.
Yeah. Kathy, what do you think about that? You agree?
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think to add on to that too, we can use the financial accounts as tools above and beyond that. So we can think about it in the way of like helping us kind of categorize our money. We tend to like to do that as people. We like to think of some money for this and some money for that. So if you have one of those savings goals, think about maybe opening up another savings account where your savings for that goal just go into that account, and then they'll get that flavor. Then you won't want to spend them on other things because you'll have already kind of earmarked them. And some people tell me that they even find it really helpful to get those savings accounts at a financial institution that's like across town and that's not linked electronically to anything that they have access to. So while they might be getting those deposits made automatically, they can't really go get them unless they drive over there and pull it out. So just a little tips that sometimes helps us really work towards those goals and dreams.
Another thing that might be helpful too is as folks create those separate savings accounts for those different goals, let's say one, of course, would be an emergency fund, which is really important to have. Actually labeling that account emergency fund, I do that with ours, and that works really well because I know that money is specifically earmarked for that. Another pot or account might be vacation fund. So you can have that, that yearly trip as a family. So going even a step further and labeling them, some financial institutions allow you to do that.
That's cool.
I think that gets into that behavior economics piece, right? The psychology of money. That's great. Those are excellent, excellent tips. I want to check in with Eric real quick before we move on to another question and to see what's going on in #MoneySmart chat.
Lots of good conversation already happening on Twitter with the #MoneySmart chat. Got a lot of participants, and I will say share one from Military Saves, who has responded to the second question about banks and credit union accounts and mentioned that these financial institutions can also provide alternatives for retirement savings and short and long-term investments, budgeting tips and tools. So sort of reiterating some of the comments that you all have made. I will also point out that we have a Waterford Bank is participating, as well as the CUNA Mutual Group. So
great.
It's great to see representation from the financial organizations.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you kind of led us into our kind of next discussion point when you mentioned tools. And I know a lot of you on the panel talked about some tools that that's important to kind of use those types of things to put yourself in action and actually start making those savings deposits and creating your budget, etc. So I just kind of want to open this up to everybody. Is there any type of free savings, budgeting apps, tools, etc. that you that have something that you would recommend or that you would give advice on if somebody was looking to start using something like an app or a budgeting tool that's free? Anybody have any insight?
Well, I'm going to talk about, sorry, Alicia, I jumped in on you.
That's okay.
I have used some different apps. There's a lot of great ones out there, and I encourage when I do financial education, I talk about different ones. But I think just that what's a really important resource is the information that your bank provides to you online, because you can categorize all of your expenses online through your bank. Some even, I think, have budgeting tools, so you can set up your budget because your budget is linked to your bank account, that it tracks it for you and makes it really simple and easy. If you're someone who utilizes your credit card to make most of your purchases, you can do the same thing with your credit card to be able to categorize those purchases. So I found with apps that an app doesn't solve your problems if you aren't very good at managing your finances. It's a tool that is used to help you. So you need to find one that works with how you like to work and how like you like to manage your finances. I found some of them, it just became very tedious to have to like constantly check it and update it, and then it went away. So I just go back to I utilize my online banking. It's not an app, but it is a resource that I use.
Absolutely. And I would just add to that, like many financial institutions now offer an app for your phone. And for those in the military, that is just super handy to get on and do their, banking online, to transfer money and to set up those automatic transfers, to just keep it on autopilot so they don't have to think about going in and doing that on a regular basis, for sure. I would also say that as you had said, Lorna, not all apps are created equal. So to definitely do your research and to make sure that you are maintaining the security on your phone and updating regularly so that your personal information is not, at risk.
Yeah, that was a great point. So Eric, since you're on Twitter, I'm curious to know if anybody is mentioning any specific budgeting app or tool that they can use online.
Haven't seen any responses yet to that particular question. So I think they should just be coming in here in a minute. So if you want to check back.
Oh, go ahead.
Sometimes I think too with apps, we don't even know what to look for because we don't realize they've created an app for it. And so I was really excited recently to learn that there's a lot of apps that can help you with food shopping. And, that's an area that a lot of us find, I think that, when we go to that grocery store hungry and we don't have our grocery list, that maybe we get home with stuff we didn't really think that we don't really need, and there's a lot of food wastage. So I'm just excited to know that there's like apps where you can have grocery lists, that you can share it with others in your household so you can all input that information, kind of like the old list on the refrigerator, but a lot, kind of catching up with the times, I guess. So sometimes I think it's just also really helpful to just Google, best money saving apps and read through and think about what are the ones that would help me in my life? Where are my sort of points that I need a little extra reminders or a little new system that makes it work in my household? So I always like to just see about what's out there and what's new that's coming up. And maybe that's not super new, but it was new to me.
I would add to that about what Kathy said about grocery shopping. That prompts for those of us who used to clip coupons. The modern day version of that is the coupon app. So while you're using your grocery shopping app, you might pair that with a coupon app to make the most of your grocery shopping dollar.
Definitely.
Yeah, and my local grocer has an app, and I love it because the coupons are already transferred digitally from your app to your rewards card. So you don't have to do anything but swipe your rewards card. And it's so exciting because as a saver, you love to see that like amount saved in 2018 or this grocery shopping trip or whatever. And, I kind of cheat the system and I load every coupon, like whatever it is. I'm like, I don't need diapers, but I'm going to load it just in case,
Yeah. Who knows? You might just buy them or buy,
saving me 50 cents, I'm down for it. So I think, the key point here when it comes to looking for apps and tools is that it's made for you and that you find one that you'll actually stick to. I love that Lorna mentioned that because we've all done it. We set these expectations. I'm going to do this every day, or I'm going to use this tool, and you just don't do it, and it's not necessarily a reflection of you. It could just because the product and you just don't mesh. But that's what this week is about. Money Smart Week. It's to educate consumers, educate individuals, what's out there to help them become more financially stable. So that's great. So I think this question is kind of fun, and I would like to start off with Lorna. So we talked about what it is to be money smart and kind of what that means to us and what that looks like, but I want to narrow it down. What do you think is the very first thing that somebody needs to do to become money smart? And that's a tough question because you just got to do one step.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to be different for everybody. But the first thing I would do is to assess my financial situation by determining my net worth. And your net worth really is just that financial snapshot of where you're at whatever one point in time, and your financial situation is going to change. But with your net worth, what you can determine is what your liabilities are, so what your debt is, what your assets are, so what is it that you own, what is it that you have value, if it's a savings account, if it's property, if it's retirement savings, and then it also includes for your assets what your income is. And at that point, if you compare your assets to your liabilities and you have a positive number, that's an indication that you're in a good place, good situation. If you end up with a negative number, then that means that you may need to reassess what you're doing with your finances and what you might need to change in terms of your financial management habits. And so what is a net worth statement? How can you do that? There's a lot of great sites that have information about it. Practical Money Skills is a website, and it's just practicalmoneyskills.com. And you can learn about where or how to assess your financial situation by completing a net worth statement, actually. And there's probably other resources out there. That's the one that I know is a really good source.
Saveandinvest.org, Lindsay, has another really good one for that. Sorry to jump in.
No, that's great. I want everybody to chime in on this question because I think as Lorna mentioned, everybody's might have a different first step, but I was just going to ask for people who don't necessarily want to go online and find a tool. I'm sure you can find your net income with good old pen and paper as well, right?
Yes, you can. If you can just, you add up your assets, add up your liabilities, and then subtract liabilities from assets. And that's how you can determine your net worth.
That's excellent. So does anybody else have a different first step that they would recommend to becoming money smart? And again, nothing is right or wrong, but how you would approach it?
I have a really easy first step for that. First of all, I think it really depends on where someone is on that process of behavior change. But I think just information gathering, which is sounds really easy, but it's just so significant in becoming money smart. Just finding out what the recommendations are for building financial stability, and so many good resources for that. America Saves, e-extension, your local state extension websites, fact sheets, resources, just finding a place to get some good research-based information on the steps that you need to take or the things that most personal finance experts recommend that are proven strategies for building wealth.
Yeah, good one.
I would also say, Lindsay, that just by participating in Money Smart Week and being in tune with your finances and kind of stopping and assessing where you are, that is in many ways a really good first step. Then I also think it's important as part of that first step and maybe drilling down a little bit deeper into where you are financially is to figure out what exactly is your debt? How much do you owe? And to not be fearful of that, to literally itemize what your debts are, and then to come up with a plan if you are in debt, to get out of debt. And powerpay.org is a really great website to go to help you figure out some different strategies to tackle that debt.
And that kind of goes hand in hand with Lorna's assessment. If that's what happens if you're negative, with that net number, and that's fine. That's fine. There's steps you need to take just afterwards.
Definitely.
Well, let me just add in one little piece then that I think we're all kind of working on a similar theme here. And I think it's just so interesting to hear about it from said in different ways and different perspectives. And one of the things I was thinking about it for the first step is to kind of do like a reality check with yourself, and where are you feeling most uncomfortable about your finances or your personal financial situation, because at different life stages it really does shift around. But I think most of us, if we stop and think, we kind of know like, oh, I need to pay attention to this, or I haven't really done this. And then maybe for your first step there would be to mark out time on your calendar on a regular basis, like every 2 or 3 weeks, that you put an hour into gathering that information, developing that action plan, making those steps, and breaking it down into little chunks so that it's not so overwhelming. Like, I have to do all of this. No, you don't have to do all of it right now, but just like, what's the thing that's making your stomach hurt the most? And then tackle that one. And then, where are you going to go next?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's always the scariest thing, is it seems so much bigger. But if we can just kind of narrow it down to, like you said, an hour, to start off with that and see where you can go from there. I think those are all great, great, great ideas.
I like what you said, Kathy, about what makes your stomach hurt the worst. Yes, that's great. That's good.
It kind of made my stomach hurt a little bit thinking about it.
And it doesn't matter how long you've been in, personal finance management, or how old you are, or how young you are. There's always something nagging at the back of your head that's like, I haven't really looked at that lately. I wonder where I am on that.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's everyone. I mean, it's not just, I think it's everyone, and it's at every phase of life. When we first started out, it was the college debt. And, as you get older, it's maybe retirement, focusing on retirement. So it's always there, and everyone needs to stop and assess.
Yep. Eric, any words of wisdom for that first step?
There were a lot of comments that reflect directly what the discussion that is you all have been having, and just wanted to share a couple other observations. And I know some of these already been mentioned. Military Saves said, simply by showing up to this Twitter chat or the YouTube live event, and I think that echoes what has been said. And a great statement by Financial Beginnings that said, the first step to becoming money smart is to stop procrastinating. Think like your future self and start saving for tomorrow today. And I think that's just falls right in line with what you all have been sharing.
That's excellent. Well, if you guys think of any more, we have an ending question. So if you have another tip, ready to share.
Okay.
All right. So, I moved recently. Well, okay, it's been a year, so I can't say recently anymore. But I moved to a different state. And I realized that this new state has a car inspection policy before you can get your registration and tag. The state I came from didn't have that. So this was an unexpected expense, a costly one that I had to undertake. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a little overwhelming. But, I had an emergency fund that I could help support this. So, Alicia, how important do you think it is for somebody who's money smart to have a rainy day fund or an emergency day fund?
I would say it's absolutely critical. It is critical. And the reason being, if you do not have an emergency fund or a rainy day fund, whatever you want to call it, set up, you may have to turn to other avenues of finding that money to be able to, to pay for something. For example, you get into a car accident and you need to fix your car, you need to pay for the deductible. Many deductibles run $500 to $1,000. If you don't have that money in a secure savings account.
Oh, Alicia, did we lose you?
That can cause, am I on now? Okay. Yeah. If you don't have that money specifically earmarked for something like the car deductible, that can cause a significant hardship. And you may have to turn to other forms of high interest credit, like a credit card to pay for that. So if you have $500 or let's say $1,000 to start, and you slowly start to build up that fund, you can essentially borrow from yourself to pay for that expense. So it's absolutely critical. And it's, I think for America Saves and Military Saves, it's absolutely the same. You must have an emergency fund. If you don't need it today, you're definitely going to need it tomorrow.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
One of the things that I do as a part of my job is I do conduct presentations on our campus to the students and about a personal finance topic. And so this past semester, I focused on the topic of developing an emergency fund. And in most cases, students didn't have an emergency fund. They also weren't really maybe clear on what it was for. And so I think it's important as we are working with college students, youth, anyone that's really just getting started to figure out how to manage their finances, is that the stress that there are so many unexpected expenses. We need to have a spending plan, but we don't know. I mean, we can have an idea of our expenses for the month, but we don't know what unexpected is going to come up. You know, with Lindsay's example of the car expense, I mean, those are unexpected. And if you, especially if you're in college and you don't necessarily know everything that you're going to have to pay for. So having that emergency fund is important. And it also helps to reduce some of that financial stress as having an emergency fund. And even if you don't have enough money in your savings to cover the emergency, it gives you some options, because then maybe you need to only borrow half the amount of the expense instead of the full amount. Even if you have to resort to credit cards or higher interest debt, it's a little bit less that you have to resort to using.
No, I think those are all valid points, and it's not if something happens; it's when it happens.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. You know, for example, Lindsay, this was just last year. My husband deployed for the year, and I unfortunately got into an accident with his truck. A deer hit it, and all of a sudden we had a very significant amount of money that we had to pay in order to get the truck fixed. Insurance picked up the majority of it, but there was a deductible. And fortunately, we had, you know, in our emergency fund money that we could pull from for that. If we didn't, that, you know, we would have had to turn to other avenues. So it's financially freeing when you have some of that money stashed aside. And you don't have to start big. You can start small and continue to, you know, add into a fund.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I hear from people that they don't want to put money into a savings account because the interest rates are so low, and that they think that they, you know, are losing money because they're not being able to get a better return on that, especially if we start building up that emergency fund to cover, like, what if you lose your job or you can't work for a while, which I think is something to keep in mind. But then I like to remind people that in a way, though, you're just sort of banking it, because if you didn't have that and you had to borrow the money, think about the cost of that in terms of the interest. And so, you know, if you're listening and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, but I don't want it all just sitting there, it's not really just sitting there. You're avoiding those high costs that might take you a couple of years to really pay off if you needed it. So
No, that's an excellent point. So I was curious, does anybody want to share a really successful money smart move that you've made in your life to become more money smart? And kind of, this could fall on the tip question, but I'm talking about maybe a strategy or something that you do that really makes you feel like you are kind of moving closer to becoming more money smart.
I would share that probably one of the best things that I've ever done money smart wise is when I started my first professional job. I put in the maximum amount that my employer would match for my retirement account. And so that's, you know, I'm really grateful that I did that, and that I started saving for retirement at an early age, and that I took advantage of that free money that is the employer provided match.
Awesome.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Started my first job and immediately started saving for retirement. And it was a heavy lift to do the match, because I was paying off a large chunk of school debt at that point. But as soon as I could, I started putting in the full match, and just, even if it was, you know, $25 a month, putting something away towards retirement really paid off. And the real reason is that compound interest is such a miracle. It's wonderful. And the earlier you start, you know, the more you see. It compounds on itself and it grows. It's a beautiful thing.
You know, when I was reflecting on this, I was trying to think about this one. last night just because I thought it was sort of a challenging question. I realized that I think going and getting more education past high school was probably the best money smart move I made. I know that it's really challenging for people to think about taking on student loan debt and getting that education, but the statistics really do show us that you're much more likely to to stay employed and not be unemployed in bad times and to make more money. Those are, averages, so it's not going to apply for everybody, but overall, I think that's really very true. And then on top of it, really returning probably more on that investment than anything else I've done. I got a job I love, and I couldn't have had it without that education. So just to encourage people to realize that while taking on that student loan debt sometimes feels very scary, there is real return on that investment.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
I think one of the things that I do is and maybe it's because I work in the field, but I love to listen to podcasts about finances. I like to read about finances, figuring out, what do other people do to manage their finances, because we all do things in a different way. What works for one person is not going to necessarily work for somebody else, but we can learn a lot from hearing about what other people are doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, I think personally, my Money Smart move was years ago whenever I really realized that I need to live within my means. And that was a move that, I am so glad I did, but it was, causing so much damage to my finances. And to me, that was one of the best moves to make me more money smart that I've ever done. So I always want to share that you don't always have to keep up with the Joneses.
Exactly. Yeah. So true.
So Eric, do we have any other insights on there about some money smart moves or rainy day funds?
Certainly lots of comments about the rainy day, the need for the rainy day funds. And we have several participants representing the military. We have the Military Saves and the Military Family Learning Network Personal Finance Group. And they both reiterated some of the points that Alicia made about impacts on families when they're when people have to move or a spouse is called or is deployed. And so Military Saves mentioned that military life is bound to catch you off guard with an unexpected move or a Murphy's Law event during a deployment. So obviously the rainy day fund is particularly valuable for them. And then the Military Family Learning Network shared that the rainy day emergency fund not only serves as a buffer for the immediate needs, but also helps protect you from sort of getting off track from your financial plans and your larger goals. They are just now addressing the question that you've covered most recently. So I'll get back and track and see where they are.
Great. Okay, so on the flip, we talked about these crucial moments and actions that we've taken in our lives to become more money smart. Does anybody want to share maybe something that was not so money smart that either you or you've heard or that somebody shared with you that could be a good lesson for others to know? Like for me, I remember it was in college, going to Subway and opening a credit card for a free footlong sub. Because that was really common whenever I was in college.
Yep.
And that was not a money smart decision.
Yeah. So I'll jump in, Lindsay, because I have something kind of similar to that. When I was in college, I took out my first credit card and I did rack up about $2,000 in debt, which to me seemed like the end of the world at that point. And I held on to that debt for a little bit, making minimum payments, thank goodness, but not much more than that. And so when I got my first professional job out of college, I decided that's it. I want done with this. And I had a hard time paying it off. So I actually took on a side gig. And I was able to pay it off doing a side gig for about a year. But I'm so glad I did, because I, was able to move on and I didn't have that debt hanging over my head. And it was a very valuable lesson for sure.
So you flipped the switch there.
I did.
Yeah, I
did.
You're the least and a most.
Yeah. So it started off not so good, and it was a good learning experience though. And fortunately, it wasn't too far into debt before I realized, whoa, this needs to be turned around. But it was a good learning experience.
That's great.
And
I'll jump in. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I'll jump in here because my least smart move is in line what's already been mentioned, is using that credit card. And same thing. I didn't get into a necessarily credit card debt in college, but I never really in college established how I wanted to use the credit card as a tool. And as I teach about credit management, credit cards are not the devil. They're not evil. It's how you use it. And so even going back to some other things we've talked about is understanding our values and how we spend money, and what's important to us. We have to incorporate how we're going to use those credit cards as a part of that. In some cases, credit cards are a really safe tool to use. In other cases, it can be real dangerous. And I think as younger adults venture into that professional world and have access to that credit, before they have the access to it, they need to understand, or even just figure out, how are they going to use it. There's a lot of benefits to using a credit card with perks, with cashback bonuses and that types of thing. But it also is a very costly financial tool. So probably for me, it was definitely not figuring out quick enough how I was going to use that as a financial tool.
Yeah.
So I was going to add to that. That is one of the biggest pitfalls. It can be really a great tool, or it can be a huge trap, is how we use credit. But the other thing I was going to mention in kind of this arena is, even if we have good knowledge and basically good financial management practices, we all can fall subject to emotional spending or stress spending during difficult times of life. So it could be during some kind of major life change, like a job or a marriage or loss of a loved one, anything that brings on that heavy emotional time, and just even day-to-day spending, comfort shopping or impulse buying or conspicuous consumption, having to have the latest or keep up with the Joneses kind of thing. So just watching out for any of that kind of emotional spending, and being sure that you take care of yourself in any kind of a major life crisis situation, making sure that you have a support system, and maybe checking in with someone about your financial decisions to make sure you're on track and doing the right thing.
Well, kind of building on that, I think mine kind of falls into that, like emotional spending and not thinking through things completely. And when my husband and I were married, pretty early on, while we were still in graduate school, we decided to buy a house, and we really didn't think about, how long we were going to be in that community before we needed to move again. And we're a pretty mobile society, whether you're in school or not. We didn't think through, the costs of buying and setting up a new home and then, selling it again. And we didn't think about the fact that the economy could change, that it could even change locally. A big company could pull out, and all of a sudden there would be a glut of houses available. And so we lost a fair amount of money pretty quickly, pretty young. So, and I think in my mindset at that time, it was like, well, if you're an adult, you buy a house, and of course you'll make money. Like, this would just happen. And I think we need to really sometimes step back and think about, like, is this the right time for us? There's certainly benefits to owning your own home, and there's a lot of pleasure in owning your own home, but I'm not sure it was worth quite the cost at that point in time. So not to say that you shouldn't have a home, but just really to think about, when does it make sense, both financially as well as, the time commitment of owning your home. So that's one that I've heard not only myself get caught up in.
No, absolutely. I love that. And I love how every single one of you gave a negative almost, but you flipped around with like a lesson. And I think that's something that we always need to remember is when it comes to finances, there's always going to be the dips and valleys. You're always going to experience some challenges, but the great thing about it is you can always go back. You can always learn a lesson and go up from there.
Absolutely.
So Eric, I'm curious, what's going on Twitter?
Well, the Twitter conversation is still addressing the question about the most money smart moves. And so I'll share a couple of those, although one I think applies also to this question about maybe the least one. And this is from Financial Beginnings, and they said not taking advantage of your employer's matching contributions is one of those least smart moves, and they describe it as like throwing away free money, which in essence it is. Some of the other comments relative to the smartest moves relate to things that have already been shared with the panelists or by the panelists of investing in graduate school. One person commented about investing into her son's education fund with a 529 plan, savings plan. And then our own Dr. Barbara O'Neill with At Money Talk mentioned about establishing retirement savings plans through her employment and using the automatic payroll deduction that makes saving so painless for us.
Great.
No, those are great. And this is a really good conversation. So we're talking about things that may be more relevant for you and I and people who are in the professional setting or working and older and have an income, right? So Kathy, is there an opportunity for younger kids and youth to become money smart?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it really is a lifelong learning process. I think we've already kind of touched on that, but it can start pretty young. And I think kids are fascinated by money. It's just a really easy topic, actually, to talk to them about. And they just want to know about it and they want to do it. And that's maybe the key, in my opinion, to having them become money smart, is that I think children need money to practice with. They need an opportunity to earn money. So that might be like, some chores around the house that they either get by an allowance or they get paid doing those at all ages. You can find things even like cleaning the mirrors for those 4-year-olds. They love it. And then a chance to spend it. And I'm not saying that you wouldn't put any parameters around spending the money, but there has to be room for mistakes. We've all talked about the things that we learned the hard way. And I think it's best if the kids can learn some of those mistakes on relatively small amounts of money instead of later on in life when maybe the dollars and the consequences are greater. So there's many a time with my children where I had to step back and say, I think you're going to be, to myself, I would say, I think you're going to be disappointed, but I didn't say it out loud. They got to try it and they got to do it. And sometimes I was wrong. They were very happy.
Well, Alicia, I know you have some small ones currently in your household.
Yes.
So anything that you're doing to help them to become more money smart?
Sure. Well, we have chores in the house that are, I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. So we have weekly chores they have to do, and they can earn money for that. But most recently, we went on a vacation to Disney, and we had about a year that we saved for our Disney trip after my husband's deployment. This was our big hurrah when he got home safely. And so that for that year, we were talking with the kids about, okay, let's save money for this trip, and that way when you get there you can do something special. Maybe it's to purchase something to bring back to remember the trip with. And so I took the opportunity to bring them to the bank, and we were able to open up their first savings account. It was a joint savings account with us as the parents, and we put in the money and get to see it grow. And it's a great opportunity to talk about interest and how interest works, and delaying that instant gratification, that desire to go and take that money and spend it right away, because that's my son, my 8-year-old's immediate wish is to go and spend it on, a video game or something, or whatever game he wants to spend it on. So it provides a lot of different lessons. I also think that just talking about money in the house, and whether that be budgeting for food, to go to the grocery store and to talk about the expense of groceries, or to talk about whether we own or rent our house, how much that is, and that mom and dad have to work for that money and for that cost. To bring those conversations up and to bring the kids into those conversations is really important. They need to understand that things just aren't paid for out of nowhere, that money actually has to come from somewhere. It has to be earned, and it has to be spent and saved responsibly.
I love that. Anyone else have some money smart kids out there that they've learned lessons from or teaching lessons to?
Go ahead, Laura.
I just would second that parents are the best teachers. And so just being aware that you're constantly modeling behavior and being intentional about those conversations. And I wanted to weigh in one thing on chores. I love the idea of allowance so kids have some money to practice with. Household chores, I think some of those need to be just something that everybody does as part of a cooperative living situation. Nobody pays me to do my laundry.
That's right.
Or to vacuum the living room floor. So I think Alicia mentioned that. But then if there are some things above and beyond their regular scope of duties that they could earn extra money on. And one of the traditional ways we've taught kids about money is with spend, save, share. So they actually can have 3 little jars or 3 little piggy banks, and just helping them learn from a really early age, from the earliest time they earn money, that to put some away in savings and some away for sharing or contribution or giving, and then to have some in the stack for spending. Spend, save, share.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
So you make a great point about making sure we're modeling for our children. And so just even going back to some of the other comments that we've made, if we as adults maybe don't have a good handle on our financial situation or our financial health, it is difficult to be able to model that positive behavior. So it is definitely something that needs to be considered at all times. I heard from somebody, and I don't remember what the circumstance was, that what they like, if their kids asked them for something that maybe wasn't in the budget that month, instead of telling their children, we can't afford that, responding with, we can't afford that this month, or we'll look at the budget for next month and just talk about it. So you're not saying absolutely no to it, but just helping the children understand that we do have to do some planning. We can't buy everything that we want to have when we want it, and even in a lot of cases, then it's forgotten about, or it's it was an impulsive thing that we maybe wanted at the time, but didn't want later. My son is 17, and he is a junior in high school. So we're looking at starting to look at colleges and things like that for him after he graduates. And a conversation I had with him a couple weeks ago was a little eye-opening for me, especially since I work in the field of personal finance. I know that he still has a long ways to go in terms of managing his finances, but we were filling out a form, and one of the questions was, how will you pay for college? Ooh. And I, of course, have been thinking about it for years, how we're going to do this, but I haven't been having the conversations with him about it. And his response was, I have absolutely no idea. I don't even understand anything. I don't know. And it was just like, oh, yeah, you don't, because I haven't talked to you about it. And then I think, how many 17 and 18-year-olds that are going to college are in that exact same situation, because their parents are freaked out about having to afford college. There's no conversation happening about it. And then we get those youth in college, and we're trying to educate them about managing their finances, and they're still freaked out about how much everything costs, how they're going to be able to pay for it, and aren't really looking at what Kathy talked about, how it's such a good investment in themselves. So it was an eye-opening for me with that conversation with my son. And I think that's important to really stress, is to talk about it, talk about things that are coming up, talk about our finances together as a family. And really, if as a parent, I don't have good financial management skills, to talk about it and say, here, this is things that I shouldn't be doing. Let's figure out ways that we can do something different so we're in a little bit better situation.
Yep. And And also when you're having those conversations, to try to be positive about it and to not communicate any, financial stress or fear. We're constantly in our profession fighting that stigma of talking about money and that kind of that overarching myth that money management is hard. So being just aware of not communicating those to your kids too. And just a little shout out to my young adults, Sloan and Nick, who have grown up to be great money smart guys. I'm very proud of them.
Aw.
That's excellent. And I think there's what I picked up from all of this is you get two benefits out of this. You're having a conversation with the youth, with children, but in return, you're having a conversation with yourself, and it kind of keeps you in line with, am I giving this info? Am I practicing what I'm preaching? Is this information valid? Is this what we actually practice in our households? Is this an opportunity for me to go back and have a conversation with my partner or spouse? So I think that there's nothing wrong with incorporating those conversations with your children at any age. And I think you guys all gave some really, really excellent points.
Oh, and Lindsay, one more thing. I mean, what better gift can you give to your child than to send them on the road to financial success?
Right.
So true.
And also, I think it's important for us to remember to, as you're saying, Lorna, to bring up these conversations. Maybe there are times in every family where finances are really tight and we are really worried about it. But the research shows that kids know that. Like, they pick up on it even if you don't say anything. And their imaginations usually make it much worse than what the reality is. So talking about it with them and saying, we have a plan. This is what we're going to do. Maybe tight, but, this is, I think can be really reassuring. And Lorna, it's so funny when you mentioned that with your son, because it brought back, I remember one of my sons coming to me all worried about it. And I was like, we've been saving for this. What do you think? So, we just same place. We just hadn't really had that conversation. We were just all focused on the where and how. So,
right.
Those are excellent. So before we kind of bring everything full circle and wrap things up, I just want to say that I think this conversation has been excellent. There's been lots of good tips and tricks and ideas, and kind of more of a realistic picture of how to become more money smart. I think, again, it's a very overwhelming topic, and Laura mentioned the stigma that is constantly behind discussing money, especially openly. So I would like to hear from each and every one of you, and Eric, you're more than welcome to share if you want, what your all-time favorite, no-fail, holy grail tip or trick to becoming money smart or staying money smart is. So don't all jump at once.
Well, I'll jump so nobody else gets it before I say it, because it's pretty. I think in order to make good decisions, we need good information. We need good data. And honestly, my favorite money smart tip is to track your spending, to track where your money is going. It's about as basic as it gets. It's not glorious. It's not fun. I don't care how you do it. You can do it on an Excel sheet. You can do it on a piece of paper. You can do it in an app. But if you don't know where your money is going, you can't tell if it's lining up with your values, and you can't really, you just can't move forward. That you need that. And you might be very surprised about what you're spending money on. And the other thing I'd suggest tracking is your income. A lot of research is coming out showing that there's a lot of volatility in people's income across income levels, so not just lower income, but all levels. And again, we may just have a mismatch in what you're thinking about is your income versus your expenses. Without the data, we can't make good decisions.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go next, and I would just say to automate your savings. It is the easiest way to save, time and time again. It is tried and true. Automate your savings, set it on autopilot.
I will jump in with that same thing. All of my retirement savings is automated. Our education savings for our son is automated. And I don't know that I would have saved what I've saved if it hadn't been automated.
And for you two who just mentioned automation, for our viewers, is this a hard process? Is this something that's going to take a lot of time to set up, or?
No, Absolutely not. It's probably the hard part is maybe going back and evaluating and making adjustments to maybe increase the savings. It's one of those things I kind of, you set it and forget it. And so probably that's maybe the key is to go back and check, am I saving what I need to save, and then making adjustments, especially as your income increases and you can maybe save a little bit more for retirement.
Yep.
And
if you're
go ahead, Alicia. Go ahead, Alicia.
I was just going to say, with the financial institution too, you can set up those automatic transfers to happen monthly, and you can have multiple automatic transfers pull for your different short-term and long-term savings goals. So definitely use that automation and those life hacks through your financial institutions. And then, so I would add to seconding what they said about being knowledgeable, having a plan on your spending, and then automating anything you can automate. The one other tip I would add to that is critical is using credit wisely for two reasons. One is keeping yourself out of debt trouble, which is so easy to fall into. And the other is to build a good credit score, because a good credit score, if you're financing anything, buying a car or buying a house, if you get better interest rates, you can save tens of thousands of dollars on the life of a loan.
That's great.
Yes.
So I think mine is, again, I like to set things automatically. Set it, forget it. It's wonderful. And it's so important also to know where your money is going. And, I personally use a free app, and it's wonderful. And I literally check it every day during lunch. And it's so nice to see, where my money is going, and kind of, sometimes it's a rude awakening.
Yeah.
But other times it's like, great, I'm doing wonderful. I can actually go on that vacation in 6 months or whatever. Yeah. So Eric, do you feel free to share yours, or if not, tell us what's going on Twitter and what their favorite tips are, if they're on that question yet.
They're just now getting to that question, so I don't have anything tracked with them, but I would just reiterate everything the other panelists have said. And just in my own case, as I'm approaching retirement, I've over many years sort of instilled the savings habit, and over time it just gets easier and easier. You don't think about it. And the interesting point now in my life is, I have to transition from the saving to the using the savings. And so it's a new perspective, but it's a wonderful thing because we have been successful at saving. So it's helped me get into a good position.
Good deal.
That's excellent.
Good.
And thank you for keeping us up to date with things that are going on Twitter. But I do have 3 o'clock on my time, so I just want to kind of wrap things up and definitely give you all many, many thanks for co-hosting this Money Smart chat with America Saves in honor of Money Smart Week. For those of you who are viewing, I hope you were able to get some new tips, tricks, ideas, maybe even get a little bit of self-confidence to go and kind of open up that bank statement and start looking at your finances, especially if that's something that's major tummy hurt recently. So I hope this conversation kind of motivated you and encouraged you, because it is always refreshing to hear that everybody essentially is finding more ways to become more money smart on a regular basis every single day. So you're not alone. And feel free to check out all the great resources we have. E-Extension, if one of you want to give a link to that, that there's great resources there. AmericaSaves.org, MilitarySaves.org, if you are a service member or a family member of a service member. There's great tips and tools available there as well as MoneySmartWeek.org. So I will leave this last few seconds for our panelists to share any final tips, tricks, comments.
Yes, I'll just say, because you brought it up, it's e-extension.org. It's just extension.org. Great place to find non-biased, research-based information.
And I'd like to just thank Money Smart Week, which is sponsored by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, for giving us this opportunity to come together and really celebrate, financial education and the opportunities to move forward with our own goals and dreams.
And I'm going to thank Lindsay, as a part of America Saves organization, for hosting for us and getting things organized. I really appreciate that you've done that for us.
Definitely.
Yes, thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate it. I'm happy to join here on behalf of America Saves and Military Saves. And I encourage all the savers out there to set a goal, make a plan, and to save automatically.
I love it. Thank you all very, very much. This was a lot of fun. I had a good time. And I look forward to doing one of these again soon with you all.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Have a great
Have a
afternoon.
great day.
Bye.
Bye.